I was desperate to get my granddaughter out of the situation she was in before they killed her. They were the barrier between my granddaughter, her getting killed.
Every one of us gets behind the wheel believing we're going to make it home. Most of the time, we do. But for thousands of families every year, one person's decision to drive impaired changes everything. A mother doesn't come home. A father never walks through the front door again. A child grows up without a parent. And the ripple of that one decision lasts for generations. For nearly 40 years, I've worked in impaired driving enforcement. I've investigated crashes, arrested impaired drivers, and testified in court. I've trained officers across North Carolina. But behind every case file, every arrest report, and every courtroom testimony was a family whose life would never be the same. Today's guest has spent her life standing with those families. Ellen Pitt has walked beside victims after the cameras left, after the headlines disappeared, when the grief was still overwhelming. Through her work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the Western North Carolina DWI Task Force, she has become a voice for people who often feel like they've lost theirs. Today isn't about politics. It isn't about punishment. It's about people. It's about remembering the victims, honoring their families, and understanding why preventing impaired driving matters so much. This is Blue Lights and Broken Glass, Beyond the Crash. I'm Dan Cutler. Let's begin. Ellen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a registered nurse, retired. I'm not paid, hired, or elected. I probably need to make that clear. Back about 2000, late 2000 and up until 2003, one of my grandchildren was the subject of one of the most high-profile DWI child endangerment cases ever covered in the news. She's alive and well, but it was a battle I never dreamed I'd have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that to rescue a child or to survive an impaired driving episode or to get justice for anything that happens, you think everybody's on your team, and then you have that, you become disillusioned, because as we were going through the process of trying to get that child to safety and get the offender away from other people where he needed to be, I began to realize that it was going to be a battle. Not everybody was on my team. Mm-hmm. And there was 1,000 different ways for everything to go wrong. So after some years of going through the courts and all that, in 2003, they approached me about opening a chapter, which they were called back then, for Mothers Against Drunk Driving in Western North Carolina, which had never existed before. The closest one to us had been Buncombe County. And the lady who helped me with my granddaughter's case was getting ready to retire. And she had illness in her family or something, and she was going to have to leave from what she was doing. So my first response was, I'm a nurse. I don't know anything about this, just what I've been through. And back in those days, I had to go down to Raleigh lots of weekends and take the initial training to become a victim advocate and what they called back then court monitors. But even after that initial training, I pretty much trained myself with the help of people like you. I had a lot of support and still do from officers and agencies and expert people like you that I couldn't be as effective or help crime victims in some of the unique situations that come up if I didn't have people that helped educate me in those early days and still today.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started. We chartered that chapter on November 3rd, 2003. And so here we are some decades later.
Yeah.
And some things have changed a lot and some things haven't changed at all.
How long would you say we've known each other?
Oh, I can remember the first time I ever laid eyes on you. You were in the courtroom, and that had to be somewhere maybe in 2004 because you were at the trial for Bradford Layton, who was the driver charged with killing Trooper Anthony Cogdell. And you were in the courtroom, and I sort of vaguely knew who you were. I knew, I guess he was then your boss. Was Al Isley your boss at that time?
Yes.
I knew him because he had helped, I guess, cheerlead for me a little bit when I first started out, but I had no idea what I was doing. And so I think we met that day, and then I kind of knew I had somebody closer to me than Raleigh that I could call.
Right.
And you probably to this day think, oh, Lord, I should never given her my phone number. Because,
No, never.
Yeah, because sometimes, things happen late at night or 2 o'clock in the morning. The driving while impaired wrecks don't go by a 9 to 5 schedule,
Right, yeah.
as you well know. It can be any time of day or night. And when my phone rings and the person on the other end of it is distraught and going through some life-changing, horrific thing, I'll call anybody. If I'm going to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I need a question answered, I'll call the governor. I don't care who they are, because I have to see how to help these people the best way.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's impressed me about you is that you're not afraid to call anybody, no matter who it is. You'll call Trump if you have to.
Right, exactly. In those days, during my granddaughter's case, sometimes I would go in an office and I would be treated as if I didn't have any sense or didn't have the right to information. Or sometimes people would do the eye roll, like here she is again, demanding. So I had people in those early days who helped me understand that I had the right to certain information, because I'd never had to know these things
Right,
before. And so, if there's, I'll give you an example of how that all works. During the hurricane, when calls wouldn't go through and texts wouldn't go through or anything, I got a call from a crime victim's mother. She was way off in another state, and her daughter was killed in a DWI wreck. It was just horrific over in Buncombe County. So the mother's way off in another state. She's seeing the news about the hurricane, and she got scared to death that her daughter's grave had washed away. And this is the middle of the night, and I'm thinking, it's not enough she had to lose her daughter the way she lost her, but now here's this. And she always says a piece of her heart is in Western North Carolina, where her daughter's buried. And so here I am, what can I do to help this mama? So in the night, I managed to get a text to go through. Couldn't get a call to go through, but I got a text to go through to an ALE agent that I knew would know right where this was, because it was the area that he worked in. And within a very short time, he and another officer, I don't know how they got where they got to, because everything, was just destroyed. But they were able to get a photograph of the cemetery where her daughter's buried. Everything was intact, because it was kind of uphill from, so that I could send that to this mama way off. She's in Arizona. So that she could have peace that her daughter's grave had not washed away. So if I call people in the middle of the night, it's generally something like that, or it's that something's gone so haywire in a case that, in my mind, has to be addressed immediately.
All right. You're no longer working with MAD, correct?
Right, exactly.
So you've kind of started your own MAD-style advocacy.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, when I started the chapter out here in 2003, I was pretty much on my own. After I went through the initial training, there was never anybody that came to go to court with me. Our director came one time when we were campaigning for the Western Crime Lab. She came to that summit that we had, I guess that was 2012 or something.
Right.
But in my thinking, Mr. Bonfoy, our previous DA, and I started the task force, and it was going to just be Haywood County.
Right.
We met for the first time in February 2004. So 20-something years later, I was still doing these two things together.
Right.
They're related, but they're a lot different, because like when about the crime lab, that was an endeavor that was specifically pretty much Western North Carolina. And you know how the situation is if you're not east of Charlotte.
Right.
There's not much interest in what your issues are,
exactly,
problems.
Yeah.
And that still was true many years later. The magistrate education piece of things, there was no interest in that from anybody else. So I guess in those first few years, I kind of outgrew, I will say, the kind of state office things, because they weren't here and I wasn't there.
Right.
And I do things quite a different way, as you well know.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of things that you can't confront with a brochure and those kind of things. Yeah. And then some years later, it became there is no actual office for MAD North Carolina anymore.
Yeah.
Mr. Clampett went down there one day looking to meet with the director over some legislation some years ago, and he drove around for like 2 hours trying to find the state office, and it turned out to be a post office box in a UPS building. And then I guess it was, I think probably when they hired that vice president of people and culture, I could see the direction that was taken. And then, they put out that position statement that, in my mind, basically acted on the premise that all officers were inherently racist. I know that is not true.
Correct.
You know that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And so there was some conflicts in my conscience like that. And so I stayed busy with when we started the DWI task force, it started out as Haywood County in 2004. Yeah. And we were getting some things accomplished, and one of those things was communicate with each other.
Right.
Because when I first started out, I and the district attorney were, I'm sure there were many days that he just probably, I don't know what he was thinking. I saw him not too long ago, and I told him that I really needed to thank him. And he's like, "What for?" And I said, "For all those days that you didn't kill me, and I know you wanted to." So we had to come to some kind of an understanding where we could work together.
Right.
And at the end of his career, we had a great working relationship. I think he learned a lot from me, and I certainly learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
And he became much more connected to crime victims, I think, as a result of that. Probably, I know I cause people a lot of stress and strain sometimes. I know that.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the things that I was demanding from him at that time, and I still do have a tendency to do this, were either illegal, and he would have to talk to me about that, or they were impossible.
Right.
Some of those later became possible, like the crime lab and
Yes.
some different things. Or they were so outrageous that everybody would just be, and then as you went along, somewhere we could meet in the middle.
Yeah. Well, when you get, like you getting involved in what you do, you kind of sometimes, I think, have this idealistic view that you can do anything, you can accomplish anything. But if you don't have somebody beside you to say that's impossible or that's not legal, there's no way to know it. And so that's how we learn, I guess.
Yeah, I always go back to the crime lab because I did have an attorney come up to me in the hall at the courtroom, and he said, and he didn't like the scrutiny in the courts by someone who was not involved in the, wasn't a lawyer or something.
They didn't like the idea of somebody looking over their shoulder.
Right. And so he said, if you think they're going to spend all that money and put a crime lab anywhere out here, you're out of your mind. They're not going to put that kind of money into something. And so there stands the crime lab at Edneyville.
Yeah.
So.
And that's been a real blessing to the western part of the state.
Yeah.
Because the backlog for those blood cases was just ridiculous.
We had a list. It was Mr. Bonvoy was the DA here, and then you had Greg Newman and Ron Moore. They all had lists of DWI cases that were approaching 3 years old that had not even been assigned to an analyst. And then it took actually one woman's death, Angela Woody, to that. Sometimes it's a signature case like that that makes everything make sense to the legislators or to the public. And unfortunately, her death happened to be that case that nobody could look away from.
Yeah. So when you look back to the beginning, did you ever think that it would become what it's become for you?
Not really, because when I first started out, nobody had ever done it here before. I didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes it would turn out to be right and sometimes not. And I felt very unwanted and unwelcome.
Unappreciated.
And but I go back to, I guess it was sometime 2004, and your old boss, Al Isley, was here. We did a big interagency check-in station, and he came out here for that. And I was talking to him, and I guess my feelings were being particularly hurt that week somehow, because sometimes the attorneys would be pretty disrespectful. And I said, nobody wants me. Nobody. And he's like, well, there's one thing about it. He said, you're shining a light into a dark place.
Yeah.
And when you do that, all the rats will start squeaking and scurrying around, and that's how you know who the rats are.
That's true.
I never forget that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I look back, and I maintain relationships with all of the crime victims that I support through the courts.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gone through the most painful, horrific thing that they didn't expect. There was no time for a goodbye or a see you later or to prepare for anything. And I try to be strong, as strong as I can be. And I try to be fierce because you have to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know the systems,
Right.
how they all work. And some days I think, gosh, I'm getting too old for this, and somebody should take it on that's younger, or I don't know who would, because like I said, I'm not paid, hired, or elected, and
It's got to be somebody with the same passion that you've got, because every bit of it is unpaid.
right.
You have to have a passion to do it.
Yeah. I just said back when it all went on, I'll never let anybody go through the court system the way I was trying to go through it, with no information, not knowing what your rights are, being scared to death and intimidated by lawyers and judges and all that. And so I hold all of them to a very high standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what those standards are, because I research. If I come in the courtroom, anywhere I come in the courtroom, I have already analyzed the docket. I'll know everybody on the docket and what they're charged with.
Mm-hmm.
I'll know everything that's public record. I'll know their blood alcohol content, or whether it was some other drug. I'll know how long the judge has been a judge and how they became a judge.
Mm-hmm.
Were they elected, appointed? I'll know if they've ever been disciplined. I'll know who the prosecutor is, and I'll know where they went to law school and what their job was before they got the one they have now. I'll sometimes look at the training for like victim witness assistance, which I feel is pretty scarce.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of research, even if I'm coming to court just on an ordinary traffic day.
Yeah.
I'll know all those things. But if it's somebody that's really been hurt or lost a loved one, I'll do whatever it takes to get them to the other side of that.
Yeah. At BC Automotive, it starts with family and a commitment to treating every customer like one of our own. Enjoy a comfortable waiting area complete with snacks and drinks while your vehicle is being serviced. From everyday maintenance and repairs to tires, custom work, and serious performance upgrades, we have the equipment, experience, and passion to get the job done right. Whether you need dependable service to keep you on the road, or you're ready to take your ride to the next level, BC Automotive is built for it. We don't just work on cars and trucks. We build relationships, solve problems, and take pride in every vehicle that comes through our doors. BC Automotive in Bryson City, from daily drivers to high performance. We don't just fix it, we make it better. BC Automotive is a proud founding sponsor of Blue Lights and Broken Glass, Beyond the Crash. Welcome back. Today we're talking to Ellen Pitt about driving while impaired, and with a focus on the victims. And we've gotten to know Ellen here a little bit in the beginning. We're going to move into something a little bit different. I want to talk a little bit about the human side of driving while impaired crashes. So when most people hear about a DWI crash, what do you think they miss?
Sometimes I think that kind of depends on their age, because the young people see the wrecked car,
Yeah.
all the damage and all that. And I guess, I don't know, because we've done some work in the schools, with young people, and sometimes that turns out to be what gets their attention.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they're as focused on that there's a body sometimes still in the car that's got to be gotten out, or that's like it's like throwing a stone in a pond. There's such a ripple out to the mother, the father, the friends, the grandmother, the impact. I'm not sure that the younger people really understand that.
Yeah. Do you think that because drinking has become so socially acceptable that when people hear about a DWI crash, it's kind of like any other crash. They miss the fact that it's preventable.
Right. I have heard a DWI charge referred to as a drinking ticket. I mean, that's some people's mind frame.
Yeah.
It's a ticket just like any other ticket. I just, anytime anybody gets charged with driving while impaired, to me, that is stopping. That's the prevention, because the next red light, the next curve, the next stop sign, that could be end somebody's life.
Yeah. When I train officers, I tell them, that's one of the things I always tell them, is that, if you went into law enforcement because you wanted to save lives, then this is the way that you'll save the most lives over the course of your career, by getting drunks off the road. Mm-hmm. And I think until you really point that out to them, maybe they don't really get it, that they're actually saving lives by stopping the behavior.
Right.
And I think people just miss that. In your experience, can you kind of explain what happens after the crash and the police are gone, the EMS are gone? What do these victims' families immediately go through?
If it goes through the trial process and everything, it's indescribable. The delay, the pain, the wait, they get psyched up and ready to go to court. Then the other side's lawyer has a headache and can't come. If it's that part of it, it's horrific. It's a door that they can't close until whatever the final outcome is going to be in the courts. If it's not, and like some of the cases I've had, the driver, the impaired driver, is killed in the wreck. And so then there's never that opportunity for the family to say, why did you do this? Are you sorry?
Right.
Do you regret that you killed my child, my husband, whatever? So that's a different kind of pain. But I go, and actually, we'll be doing this check-in station pretty soon. For a mother, it's 24 years, 22 years, 23 years this year. Mm-hmm. And she goes to her son's grave. He was a teenager and he wasn't doing anything wrong.
Right.
And he was killed by a repeat offender, who, by the way, did not get convicted. So she goes to her son's grave, and she always has that curiosity. What what would he be doing right now? He'd be in his 30s. Where would he be, and what would he have done with his life? Because she sort of had an inkling of what he wanted to do. I met with a crime victim the other day, and a couple of days before this man was killed, he and she had gone to see about getting her grandmother's wedding ring designed into an engagement ring for her. And they were planning to get married soon in their future. They had it all planned out. And you just don't know. It's so sudden. I worked as a hospice field nurse for, I think, 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
And there was time, to prepare and make a will and talk some things over and say goodbye and have a nice, quiet, peaceful death, as pain-free as you could.
Yeah.
And so that is so entirely different from getting a phone call. One of the things that stands out in my head sometimes is in a trial, the father was making a victim impact statement, and the state asked him how he was notified. How did he know or was told that his daughter had been killed that evening? And he said, I was sitting on my porch and 2 state troopers pulled up, and when they got out of the car and started up the steps, they both took their hats off. And he said, that's the instant that I knew my daughter was dead. I didn't know what had happened, but I'll never forget them taking those hats off, and that's how I knew.
Yeah. From an officer's perspective, those were some of the hardest things I think I ever did, was to make those notifications. And you just can't, you forget, I think people in general forget how it affects everybody. It affects the victim's family. It affects the officers involved. It affects the EMS, the first responders. It affects the officer that has to make that notification. And it's like you said a few minutes ago, it's like throwing a stone into a pond. There's a ripple effect. It affects everybody around that incident. No matter who you are, it affects the people who drive by and see the aftermath of the crash. It's
one
just
of the
sickening
most
sometimes.
one of the most frequent calls that I get, other than the fatalities and the injury cases, or sometimes people call me because it's a repeat offender that just is terrorizing the community and can't get anything done, is people call me about children riding with impaired drivers. They are crime victims. They're being endangered. I can't think of anything more dangerous than being up on the interstate, as my granddaughter frequently was, going down the interstate 50, 60, 70 miles an hour with somebody that can barely sit up in the seat. And so people will call me about that, and they want to be anonymous, because if it's a grandparent or an aunt or somebody in the family, they feel like that the child will be withheld from them if they report it. And so it took me a little while to get a system going for that. But if you want to see officers just literally sick and trying to do whatever they can do, is when they know they pull a car over and you have somebody maybe with a 0.28 blood alcohol, or the car's full of dope and you have that person that's practically comatose in the driver's seat, and you have a carload of kids.
Yeah.
It's just horrific. And over the years, from the other side of it, I was like, when it was all going on, back in 2001, 2, and 3, I looked at the officers as saviors, rescuers, because the courts failed, the Child Protective Services failed, everything was failing, and I just felt like I was desperate to get my granddaughter out of the situation she was in before they killed her.
Right.
Because I knew she was 5 and 6 at the time. And so when the officers would pull the vehicle over and arrest the offender, I thought they were the barrier between my granddaughter and her getting killed.
Right. Yeah.
And I always try to, I'm thankful for them to this day, for the work they do, because I don't know if they even know that when they pull that driver over and get them out and take them to jail, the magistrate's office, wherever they're going, we don't know what would have been around the next curve or the next red light they ran through or the next stop sign.
Yeah. I think people don't realize the kind of danger they're in just driving on the roadways. Yeah. And in North Carolina, statistically speaking, we've had, during my career, when I first started in law enforcement, this statistical data told us that we had in the neighborhood of 88,000 drunk drivers arrested in the year prior to that year that I think it was in 1990 when these numbers came out. 88,000 just in the state of North Carolina. And one of the things that just really impressed upon me the danger that we experience just by driving on the roadway is that number. In addition to that, and honestly, this is just a guess because we don't know, but we believe that we're really only catching about 5% of what's on the road.
Right.
So there's a drunk driver out there all the time. And when you think about how close you are every time on a 2-lane road in particular, every time you pass another vehicle, you're 5-6 feet from death at any given time.
I'm always shocked, and our task force has been tracking this, as you know, for some years now, is that people have a tendency to think that the people who get arrested for driving impaired at a Friday night check-in station,
right,
and they don't realize that at 9 o'clock in the morning they're in the school traffic with 2 or 3 people who are have high blood alcohols or are impaired on prescription drugs, or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they're in the grocery store parking lot with somebody that has a 0.28 blood alcohol content, and as the drug other than alcohol, impaired driving is, it's like a tidal wave now, I guess you could say. Those people, they're not out in the bars, and they're not coming out of a bar at 2 a.m. They're out there at all hours of the day and night. And and of course, that's been a newer campaign for me in the last few years, is to give officers the kind of tools they need to intervene in the drug other than alcohol impaired driving.
Right. Yeah. We're going to pause our conversation here, but Ellen's story and the conversation is far from over. In part 2, we'll continue talking about the lies behind the statistics, the families left to carry the consequences, and the work that still needs to be done. Because when the crash scene is cleared, when the blue lights are gone and the broken glass has been swept from the road, for the victims and their families, the story is just beginning. Join us for part 2. For the victims, real people, real stories, real impact.